That's kind of it's
Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order here. It's 5:15. And can we roll call, Michelle?
Anderson.
here.
Miller. Here. Wong.
Here.
All members are present in the boardroom.
All right, do we have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, or the agenda carries. Approval of minutes from last month.
I move that we approve the minutes from last month.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to the first topic of discussion, which is the Budget 2A food truck presentation. And I think this one has drawn the attention of a few people, including myself.
Sorry, I haven't been in person, so this is new again. I want to take a minute and introduce those of you that have not met Dawn Smith. She is, as of effective Thursday, our new Director of Food Service for the school district. And Jared Haxton is the new account manager for Airmark Food Service. So they're going to both present you the ideas. Dawn and I had worked on this prior to our transition, so we're super excited to share this with you today.
See if I can move this over a little bit. Sorry, you're okay. Just gotta move it. That's okay with you. All right. Can you go ahead and present? All right, well, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Joanne, for the introduction. Kind of knocked off a couple of the small things that I need to do, introducing myself, introducing Dawn, so thank you for that, Joanne. Folks, what we're here to do tonight is we want to talk to you a little bit about the food truck idea that has been talked about in the past, but we want to go ahead and move forward with this. So I think what's important right now that we want to talk about before we get into the idea and showing you the pictures and the specs and all the cool things that we'd be able to do to move forward with this program is talk to you about exactly, what are the benefits to having the food truck. We want to give you kind of the idea and what we can do, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the food truck in itself. So the first thing that I think that's most important is building participation with the district. We're talking about rotating concepts and menus to alleviate menu fatigue and create excitement. And I can tell you right now, when we get a chance to look at exactly the specs, it would really give us a limitless of what we're able to provide. So we're talking breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, could be concession foods. For example, we could come here for this meeting here, we could have a food truck parked out here and we could provide dinner for items for school board meetings, PD, Lancer McNeil night, anything you can think of. On top of that, we'd be able to drive these trucks around to different schools. So, for example, if Todd Elementary had a special recognition, we'd be able to go over there, create a custom menu for them based on what the staff wants, what the kids want, and we'd be able to provide meals for them. Not only that, but we'd also be able to be National School Lunch Program certified, where we can give them exactly what they're looking for, make sure that they have all the nutrition that they need. Lastly, if we had this food truck during these times, or worst case scenario, this continues on during COVID, we'd be able to have this throughout the second semester, because it's going to take 4 to 5 months to make and to produce and bring here. So could you imagine if this unfortunate incident continued to move on into the second semester? We'd have these food trucks where we'd be able to take it to neighborhoods or provide them with hot food as we move forward through the school year. I want to pass it off to Dawn now, who's going to talk a little bit more about why we think the food trucks are a necessity now.
So right now, we have a excess fund balance of over $900,000. And so looking at ways that we always are looking for more participation, how do we build Fund 50? So we want to spend money to make money. But right now, especially with COVID and struggling with how we're going to get meals to kids, this was something that we've been working on, Joanne and I and Sean, for about a year. And, you know, we kind of wish that we would have had it before this. So Aramark actually has this particular truck at the University of Indiana, and I met with this young lady in Philadelphia, and well, they have two trucks too, and so they've used it for so many different things. And we've been fortunate enough that one of our key players with Aramark, he actually is in our region, and he's willing to kind of help get things, you know, running for us. So the initial truck, and you can see the diagrams of the truck, it's $205,000 is what they're coming in at. It's fully loaded. It has air conditioning, it has heat, it has grills, it has coffee pots, it's got popcorn poppers, it's loaded with everything that we could imagine. An awning that retracts. And so we contacted the DPI just to see if we were able to use this sort of vehicle for school nutrition. I mean, we've seen it a lot in universities, but not very many people have them in the elementary setting or the high school setting. So it is approved by DPI. We did submit our excess fund balance and our plan, and so this takes up about half of what we have. As Jared said, it's a 4 to 5 month turnaround on this. We've tabled this a couple different times to take to the board for various reasons, but now is the time. We would have to submit this before June 30th. It would have to be completed by June 30th. So the other thing is that in the past, we've had so many culinary options, and we have kids that work with us that have special needs. We have DECA that we haven't been able to really implement or use for these sort of things. So what we're hoping for is that because it's going to be licensed through Aramark, paid for by the school district, owned by the school district of Beloit, that we're hoping that these groups can help us serve the food and be part of this program, and then some of that funding would go back to their group. But some of the money would have to come back into Fund 50 because that's the way that the DPI and the USDA works with that. So and then you would just have to have somebody licensed that, you know, is on the truck at all times, and that would be an Aramark employee. So I'm going to hand it back to you.
So the next following 10 slides are, to be honest with you, just kind of the nuts and bolts of the actual carts itself. The following pictures, after we kind of show you the bird's eye view, the roadside view, and then the serving side, you'll actually get to see kind of a look at what the carts are. It's basically a mirror image of what we'd be looking for, except for obviously you'll notice, like Dawn said, it's the Indiana University food truck, so you'll see the red, you'll see the white. Obviously that would be something that we would work with, and making sure that we get the right colors that we're looking, and the right scheme that we're looking to do. So from there, that's just a bird's eye view. Again, Dawn said it's got all the bells and whistles, you know, whether that be griddles, freezers, coolers, a serving area. It's got everything that we need to be able to provide any menu that we'd be looking to do. So essentially, it's a full kitchen. Looking at the next side, that's the roadside interior. So if it were parked on the curb or on the opposite side of the curb, you'd be able to see everything that it includes there. And then on the next slide is actually what you'd see from the curbside. So this is when you'd come up, about halfway up on your right-hand side is your serving counter. It's a 3x6 area. On the top right, you can see there's a shadow box for a TV screen, so we can go digital with our menus. We can customize, we can change it to whatever event it's at. If we have different menus, we can make it digital. Again, these are just all of the dimensions. I don't expect you to kind of read through and look at every single one of them, but that's got a good idea of when Dawn said it's got everything that we'd be looking for. This is just a list of everything that we have. And then the next slides are just examples of Indiana University. Again, we see that it's Gloriana's, it's white, red and white. Obviously, we would look to do something different there, but this is just a picture of the exact design and specs that we'd be looking to get. Here, I was able to work with a different school district and get a picture of actual power awning that we'd be looking to get. This looks very similar, again, in the design of what we'd be looking for. And then just a few pictures of the inside. Obviously, you can see it's got all the stuff that we'd be looking to do. Obviously, it's clean, sleek look. All right, well, I appreciate all you guys' time. Is there any questions?
Questions? Go ahead, Megan. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Can you talk to me about how this, so we have an access in Fund 50, which is for food service. What is the impact on the children in poverty in this community who are going underserved right now? I'm wondering if this money could be better spent on our kids who need to eat this year.
Well, right now, we still have had all of these sites open, and our normal participation in a normal day during school is 10,000. And we've had we started out with 2,800 a day, and we're down to about 1,800 a day. But we've extended, the meals are free, so it's not that we're not using the money where we need to use it for food, because that is still there.
So just to clarify, I understand, I'm really proud of what our district did this year under COVID. I know that there's been a change in some federal and state pieces that have prevented us from extending that to all children in the community like we were able to do prior, and I believe that ended on the 24th of August. What I'm wondering is, if we have this excess of funds, we're in a global pandemic, I question the wisdom of using this amount of money right now when we know that we have kids in need in our community, and we know that hunger plays a great role in student achievement.
And Megan, I truly appreciate that. I understand where we are trying to feed the waiver that allows us to look at the continuation past August 31st actually came from the USDA, a reversal of their decision at 8:30 on the 31st. So every district is trying to figure out what is happening. When we served our last meals on the 24th, we provided 5 days worth of meals. So that took them through that entire week. We have not been able to give our food service employees a break as they've continued to work since March 14th, and they needed to have their annual certification trainings. So although we're saying we're trying to give them a little bit of a break, they are conducting all of their certification trainings that are required for them to continue providing the food service. We are looking at those waivers and what will happen with our community eligibility program so that we can make sure we're doing the right choice to feed the majority of our community. I want to continue to provide all the meals that we can. This food truck is not taking anything away from the food that we're serving. The school district is already providing fresh fruit enhancements that comes directly out of our fund balance, so that we've done that for the last 3 years, that we've been providing that outside of the reimbursable. We are putting these funds and the excess fund balance back into the schools. We can't possibly buy enough food to give everybody. They don't have the storage capacity. We're providing, we've had witness, people said they didn't have the capacity to store the 5 days worth of food. They don't have that in their homes. And we wanted to make sure the reason that the district continued to do daily meal service is exactly for that reason that you're saying, is our children in poverty and our community in poverty, we want to put eyes on people. That connection of them seeing somebody every day. You knew what kids were coming to your school, what families were coming. And right now in the pandemic, as we can't have that connection, that was a huge component of us making those choices of having food service every day. I can tell you, we have been on challenges of Joanne, we need to cut labor. We need to make sure that we are serving, give them 5 days at a time, give them 3 days at a time. Let's not serve every day, because we would save money. But that's not in the best interest of our community. I will never stand in front of you and tell you that I don't think things, I wouldn't make recommendations that I don't think are in the best interest of our community. When we look at the excess balance and what we have done for the last couple years with our excess balance, we have improved kitchens. We have purchased new seating to make our students have a more comfortable environment. You know, if you go look at the high school annex and the night spot, you look at the intermediate schools where we've now done flex seating, where they have booths and high top tables, so they feel more comfortable. It's more like going to a restaurant. We are trying to make sure they have better options, better food choices, but we are stuck with staying with the USDA requirements of the program. I strongly feel, and as we said, we have put this off many times, bringing it to the board for many reasons. I want to make sure it's the right time. We could have provided so much more if we had had these in place during COVID. We are dropping off chicken patties and giving them heating instructions on how to heat that. We know some of our families may not be able to do that every day. So these are pre-cooked. They can eat them cold because we have to give them food that is safe in any environment. Imagine if we could drive this up in our neighborhoods at any time of day and say, we are now providing you with your meal, hot. You can have, you know, when they did the Domino's pizza donation, those kids were so excited. They had a hot pizza, they got a whole pot. We could do that ourselves. And we can work with our community partners to do that. So some of the other projects, just to give some highlight, this $400,000 for, that's 2 trucks. That's one to run constantly on the west side and one on the east side. Take them. When we get back to sports, this would enable Joel to have these at hockey games and baseball games that we're not just on campus. You know, imagine getting our community together behind a homecoming rally or, you know, our baseball games. But this would also, we're looking at hydroponic gardens for our school to include and stimulate our science curriculum. We have that indicated. We have, we're doing walk-in freezers, new cafeteria tables and furnitures at some of our elementary schools. This is also, the excess balance is covering additional sneeze guards that we're going to need due to COVID. We have new exhaust systems and pizza ovens so that we can offer more alternatives to our kids. Everything that comes out of Fund 50 has to be related to food service, and I am trying to put things out there that will aid our community, but most importantly, get our participation back up. So sorry if I got a little long-winded, but I'm very passionate about what we're doing, and I do really feel it's in the best interest of our kids.
Board Member Anderson, question?
So my question is, what justifies us spending this kind of, like, putting our money forward to this, and then what is it going to cost for us to even keep this vehicle and maintain it and keep it running every year?
Okay. We have the garage space at Christofferson, which we'll be storing it at the Christofferson Center. As far as the gas and maintenance and insurance, it is the liability for the food and things are done by the licensing agent, so those will be under Airmark's control. We would be paying fuel costs, of course. Those are things that would be added into our cost of having it out at the site. So those would be, if we're delivering National School Lunch, that's going to be part of our delivery system, which we already factor those into meal prices and, you know, when we get our reimbursable rates back. So the ongoing cost is sustainable within Fund 50, and this project will sustain itself through Fund 50. We're not building new garages or anything for the storage side of this. And this money can't be used on anything instructional.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Board Member Miller, do you have another question?
I did. I appreciate all of the context that you gave, and I'm really excited to hear about like a lot of these other projects that you've described. I guess what I'm getting at is I don't want to Grinch over your program. I think it's very exciting. I appreciate the points that you brought out. My biggest concern right now is how this directly relates to student achievement, and I'm curious, kind of as a two-parter. One, I kind of still have my initial concern that we know that kids do not learn well when they're food insecure. And I'm just, you know, obviously more than I do, which is why I'm asking you. I'm wondering what we can do in spite of the powers that be pulling things at 8:30 at night, right? I want to know what we're doing, I guess, about student food insecurity. Like, how is this helping that? Because I can't imagine being a child, seeing like the equivalent of the ice cream truck pull up and we're saying, oh, sorry, you're in K-12, you can't have this. That's very heartbreaking to me. So I want to, if you could address how that's going to play out, because, you're looking confused because like the students that aren't in our distance learning because of the USDA piece are not eligible, right? Okay, so which I realize is not our call, but I want to know how this is the best use of funds to address, like, I just want to know that that's our priority, I guess, here. So if you can extrapolate my question, my first point, I guess, is just, I want to know what we're doing for food insecurity because of COVID, because of the current circumstances that are outside of our control. And two, I just want to know what is the logical piece here that directly relates to student achievement.
Okay. I'll let them talk to that side as well. This concept is well before waivers, well before, I think we've set the precedent that we are feeding our community, and we will continue to feed our community as long as we can continue that program. With this new waiver, we are continuing to look at what that impact is. We had calls with DPI today to what happens to our community eligibility program. We want to make sure that if we continue to serve under the national or the summer food provision, if that directly impacts our CEP or adding the Beloit Virtual School changes our numbers, because under National School Lunch, just so everybody kind of understands that concept, you have to report per school. So we would have to ask every student who comes up, what is your name and what school do you attend? So if they attend Aldridge and they're picking up their meal at Robinson, that meal under National School Lunch counts for Aldridge. So if they came and said, I attend Beloit Virtual School, we don't have an entity certified under our National School Lunch as Beloit Virtual School because they don't attend a location. Right now, prior to COVID, Beloit Virtual School students were not coming in for meals at buildings. They are their own entity, they have their own report card, they have their own indicator number. So if the option and the waiver to serve outside of our school was not extended, we don't have a school to serve Beloit Virtual students. We would have to have them come into one of our buildings and be counted into those buildings to try to serve them. We would not have that. You couldn't have people show up at Robinson or Aldridge or BLA and say we can now serve all of, at this point we have 200, I think, plus students to enroll in virtual school. We need to make sure that we have that capacity. So I understand this waiver is new. I understand that concern, and we are definitely addressing that. Not prepared to say what our decision is. We're still getting information. I don't want you to make a decision on that we're not going to feed the community and that we're not addressing that need, because we have been addressing that need and we will continue to. But I think your question is the overarching, how does this affect performance and academic achievement?
If I could just interject, I do appreciate that explanation, but what I want to know is outside of those factors, I guess my question was, how is the purchase of this food truck going to increase our ability to address food insecurity? That was a really good explanation and I appreciate that, but I'm just curious, so in your presentation you had, breakfast, lunch, you talked about snack. Are we able then go above and beyond what we're already able to do? I guess I'm just looking in spite of those factors that you just very beautifully explained, how does this truck help augment what we're already able to do is my first question. And my second question is, how does that impact our student achievement?
It gets us to the kids. It gets us to their community to provide those meals. So this gets us out to where our kids and our families are. And in any circumstance, this is what's going to, we have transportation barriers. We have it that they can't get to the elementary schools. You said it perfectly. A student who has food insecurity is not going to perform in school. They're not concentrating on what they're doing. Getting food to them is the top priority, and this gives us that delivery method. And I can assure you there wouldn't be a situation where we're sitting there driving it around like a ice cream truck and saying, nope, you can't have any, you can't have any. These will be targeted, we will advertise, we will be saying, here we are, come and, under the community or the summer food provision, it would be just like our sites. Drive up and you can have a meal, you can have breakfast, you can have lunch. We have the fresh fruits and vegetable program that we just got approved again for this year. We have our fresh vegetables and fruit enhancement that the district subsidizes that. We have the snack programs. All of these things are available under those waivers, but we are regulated to what the USDA says we can do under the National School Lunch and National School Breakfast. I will tell you, they tell you you have certain portion size, and I've learned now, we don't say elementary school, you only get a half an apple. We give them a whole, the high school and the elementaries are getting the same portions. We are making sure everybody is fed, and we do go above what is required, because we don't have to do the enhancement. So I think we already have that ongoing commitment, and we will continue that. The other thing to note is if this money, the excess balance isn't spent and isn't used by the district, we have to give it back. And so you have to come up with a plan of what you're going to do. And that is how we have gotten our kitchens and our cafeterias and our food programs so robust. And we are the envy of many districts because we have successfully navigated this program. But this money, if it is not spent on food service, we will have to send it back to the state and to the federal government.
June 30th, yeah.
On June 30th. I don't know if you guys want to.
Are you good, Board Member Miller?
So I'm still waiting on student achievement.
Okay.
So if I can jump in a bit in terms of, Board Member Miller, we know that students who are hungry, they don't, they're not concentrating on the academics at hand. And when we're in a situation when we're normally in school, we can take care of those needs because we have eyes on them. We're able to say, a teacher can notice this child is not concentrating, and if we find out that it's hunger, we can easily go and provide something. Because we're in distance learning, we don't have the luxury of being able to have that capacity all in one place. So by using the funds in this way, we can address the situation in which we can take the food to them. We are relying currently on within the summer lunch program, which we're transitioning out of. But when we were in our spring, the students were relying on either their older siblings or their families to go and get the food, bring that back. Now that we're coming into the fall, which is unfortunate, the timing is that if this is approved, we're waiting on probably the middle of winter, so January, February, if this project were approved. But if we were in distance learning in February, imagine the capacity of a district being able to not only leverage Durham, in which we're already using our busing contract to help augment this, but now we are able to, in cold weather months, not only deliver food that is not need to be heated, but now have a food truck that we can go and have food being prepped hot and then have students come out, kind of like a a bus, but it's delivering the food. Instead of bringing the students to the school where we can give them a hot meal, we can bring the hot meal to the students. That's going to give them the food. That's going to allow them to feel more secure about their nutritional needs. That will free up their mind space to concentrate on the academics and not about where my next meal is going to be coming from. That's where the student achievement piece is going to start to bump up, because now they have not that concern worried on their mind. They're more focused. They can be more focused on the distance learning and the academics at that point. So that's my best answer for drawing the connection between hunger and food provision and our academic achievement. Is if we can eliminate that as a worry on a student's mind, on a family's mind, it allows them to be more focused on the academic learning that we're trying to provide. So may not be the best answer, but it's the answer that I can provide you.
Well, I appreciate that, both of you. Are there opportunities for students to participate? Like since I believe, Dawn, could you speak a little bit more to that? Because I feel like that would be a student achievement piece if we could tie that in with CTE or other experiences.
So we were involved with the culinary for many years, and because of the competitive foods, DECA was not able to work during the school year, during the school day, because of the new regulations. So with this, they could still be a part of it. We have, what do we have? I think almost 30 employees that have special needs, and some of those are students. And we love that part of this job, and we want to continue with that. But we also have other organizations that have, asked about it, that want to be a part of it. But yeah, we want students. I mean, we could take it to McNeil and we could have, their Lancer night and their kids could help. As long as there is one Aramark licensed employee on that truck. So.
Okay, I appreciate it, and I will turn it back over. I think somebody had a question from the chat, but yeah, I guess I'm just struggling to see the student achievement driven element of this. And I'm still really struggling, and I know it's out of our hands, but just the piece of the USDA and us not even be able to serve all of our kids, I'm really having a hard time conceptually with this, but I do appreciate the information.
And I absolutely understand where that's coming from. We're trying to work through the changes that are coming at the last minute. So completely understand where you're coming from. And I apologize if I misunderstood part of the question in terms of how do we engage the students in that piece. So, and that definitely is something that I know is part of the proposal. We'll want to look at how do we bring students in and teach them those skills as well.
I have several questions as well, but Board Member Levy has a question from, so go ahead.
Thank you. There's been a lot of displeasure expressed with our current relationship with Aramark. And if I'm understanding the presentation correctly, the truck would be owned by the district and licensed by Aramark. So my question is, if we're not certain that we're interested in moving forward with Aramark past our current contract, why would we create additional entanglements with them?
Thank you, Board Member Levy. It would be licensed by whoever is running our food service program. So if we terminated a contract with Aramark, went with another service company, or decided to bring it back in-house, that licensing would be done by our provider or the district. So that is the key component, and why I felt it was very important to tell you the school district owns this. The only reason it is going to have an Aramark person is that that's our managed food service company, but it is owned and maintained. It's not going to have big Aramark logos all over it. This will be totally a school district vehicle. It will be sponsored and run by the school district. They are providing the licensing, which they do in all of our kitchens. So all of our food service is licensed through Airmark because that's our food service provider.
So is it safe to say that any food service provider we would go through would have this, I don't know if it's specialized or not, but truck licensing separate from a stationary kitchen?
Yes. Yeah, it is, the licensing is your food service license. That means you've met all the parameters, you have the insurance liability, you have that liability to make sure that you are adhering to sanitation standards and all that. So anyone who's serving has to have that licensure.
Perfect. And then my final question, and then I yield back to the chairman. Some discussion has been brought up about inclusion of students, which I'm very concerned with, specifically with DECA and how a lot of their programming has been stripped, from my understanding, due to our relationship with Aramark. So the example was, it's Lancer night, you pull the truck up and students can come help as long as there's a licensed person from Aramark or whoever our provider at that time happens to be. Have you thought through like supervision or what additional requirements would be needed? Because I would think that there would be training. You can't just put random students on a truck and say, hey, here, help serve food. Has that plan been thought through? Because I am concerned that there doesn't seem to be a lot of student integration in this process.
Well, the reason that DECA was not able to stay in the school district is not because of Aramark. That was the USDA final rule. It was competitive foods, and they had to bring a different service in. So at the time Steve McNeil was here, he came to me and said, okay, they can't run anymore. We have to use that space for something. So the way that the law reads is that Aramark and the National School Lunch, the National School Breakfast, the after-school program can run from midnight of the night before until a half hour after school is out. Anything after that, they can do whatever they want to do. So these trucks can be parked outside of the high school a half an hour after school's out, and DECA can run it all night. So that's where Aramark has to follow the law. So that's what happened with DECA and some of the student programs. The culinary was one of them. The funding had to go back into Fund 50, and the USDA required us to change the way we did the culinary. All of our meals in the culinary were a la carte meals. We can't do that anymore. So all of the meals have to be part of the National School Lunch Program. So that kind of dissolved a little bit of our student impact of them helping with us. But that's why we're looking at booster, we're looking at things outside of the regular school day that's not the National School Lunch.
And I think your question on training, we would never just put the kids from McNeil on the truck and say, here, go at the griddle. I'm sorry, I didn't know. There's going to be an Aramark employee on this truck, and they will help organize and train, and they're going to be watching and understanding what's happening. It's a great growth opportunity, and our schools are already using food trucks and picnics as part of their PBIS programming, and this enables the kids to be able to be part of it. It's not just running up to the truck. They get to decide what they want to have for food for this PBIS. You can have tacos one day. You can have, corn dogs another day. You can do any type of different food for what you feel as a building and as a student body, what you want to provide in there. So, no, I wouldn't let them just run loose. None of us would. That's why we have to have that Aramark employee to make sure that they are meeting the sanitation, they're handling food safety. It's not a let loose. There will be a little, here's a tutorial, here's what you can do. Maybe you pull the pops out, maybe you start getting napkins. You'd see what you're working with, the student age and the group that you're working with, and how they want to be involved in that process.
Did those answer your question, Board Member Levy?
They did, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Briesmeister, did you have a question, or you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I do. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for putting this plan together. It's really exciting. I think it'd be awesome for our community and our school. The one question that I have is we have students that are highly engaged in their culinary program in the hospitality group. DECA is a business club, which is very concerned with the competitions and fundraising and things like that as well. When you talk about student opportunities, can you speak a little bit more about what the student opportunities are? Because right now, when it comes to a student making something from scratch and learning about the actual culinary experience, the road to becoming a chef, it's very limited. And the pride of going from raw ingredients all the way to a fine finished meal and serving it to a peer, a parent, a community member is a transformative experience. And you really want to get back to that place with our students. And I always thought a food truck might be a way to do that, to maybe mitigate some of these requirements that we seem to be shackled with. But as I go through the presentation, it seems like it might be more of the same.
Well, you are going to be limited to that outside of school hours if you're serving outside of the National School Lunch Program. So nothing says that we cannot park this truck at let's say we're in session and we want to park the truck out on the Riverwalk and say, you can walk outside and have tacos. Those tacos are going to meet the standards of the National School Lunch Program, and we can serve that from the truck. It gives them alternatives, be able to get out. I don't know how involved Airmark or our kitchens are in the culinary process of the educational side. This gives them exposure to some of that hospitality side. It isn't necessarily the cooking. I mean, there's going to be cooking going on in there, but it's not taking necessarily that raw chicken and making cordon bleu in a food truck. But anything that they wanted to do outside of those hours, they would have that flexibility to be able to make things and serve. You could do a night where you have your culinary, you have family night, and the kids can go in the truck and cook these foods and serve it to their families. That's absolutely an opportunity. Just can't be during our national school lunch, or we're in violation of USDA.
But you always have to remember that some of that funding has to go back into Fund 50 in order to do that.
Yeah. And so what primarily would be happening is we would be purchasing the food. You tell us you want a taco menu. We're going to purchase that food through our resources through Fund 50. The organization will work the event. That money for the food is replenished into Fund 50, and they get to keep the proceeds from that fundraiser that they did. So it is allowing them that flexibility, but yes, because this is being funded out of Fund 50, it does have to run through that. We've got to have that process of the food service will provide those, but we'll do your shopping. That's the other side is you make sure you say I want to have taco Tuesday at Todd, as that's the example you gave. They tell Airmark or whoever our managed food service is at that point, we want Taco Tuesday. Airmark, part of that licensing that we're talking about, they've got to go out and buy the lettuce and the cheese and the meat, and they have to make sure that it's cooked and handled correctly. So that's what that insurance is. They're liable for the food. Whoever's running that is paying back the cost of that food and being able to use this as a fundraise opportunity.
And to further answer kind of your question a little bit about the engagement piece from some hospitality people that are involved with hospitality, I can tell you just standing here, being here for 3 weeks, in my experience with food trucks and different lines of businesses, is I'm going to look at every possible avenue that if there are interested students who are willing and want to be a part of this program, and whether that be outside of the National School Lunch Program during different hours, as long as we're approved through, it's through the USDA and we're good to go, I'll absolutely look down every single one of those avenues and be a resource for them. Being a food service company, we want to try to provide as many hospitality majors as we possibly can that are going out in the workforce. So, I'll continue to work with Dawn, continue to work with Joanne, and if approved, we'll absolutely go down that road and try to target those individuals that will be looking and interested into kind of furthering their career. Absolutely.
And I just apologize. I thought you were providing some context to the quote, answering the question as opposed to having a question yourself. So.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I have a few questions here, I guess. One, and I understand this, and I think that, initially if there is kids that want to be involved, I think initially it's going to be a novelty. And I think over time, though, it'll be more of a privilege, and I would hope that would be, I think of this as kind of like being the crossing guard when I was a kid, and I get to wear that cool badge across my chest and go out and kind of hold kids back and make sure they only cross the street when I let them. I would think it would be much like that, and I would hope that it would be, and kids would look at it as an honor. One question I did have is that, and Ms. Armstrong, you had mentioned about past projects that we've used money for from Fund 50. And I know that I think last year, was it the McNeil kitchen area? Was it, or the freezer? I think that the money was used for, if I'm not mistaken. This money this year, if this money is not used for this, what other projects do we have that the money would be used for that we could, or that we would need to use it for?
Well, as what we have identified, as I kind of highlighted, I just go quickly through the list. We have the mobile hydroponic garden systems for all elementary schools. If we didn't use this, I would expand it probably to all the intermediates and possibly the high school. Problem is, you got to have somebody who wants to work it. And this is the sunlights that grow our lettuce, and then the kids can eat that lettuce once we have it.
We're experimenting with one right now.
Yeah. Ice machines at all the intermediate schools so that they would have that option. A new walk-in freezer and restructuring the storeroom projects at the high school so that they actually have a dry storage area. Looking at tray return carts at the 6 elementary schools and portable hand washing stations so that kids are washing their hands and doing that before they eat and after their meals. New cafeteria tables and furniture over at some of our elementary schools. We've done the intermediate schools. If this weren't approved, I would probably have to be a little more creative in trying to do more of the furniture at the elementary schools. But we have been having this excess balance. I am not comfortable just spending money to spend money. We have done so many substantial projects that I don't want to just say, oh, I replaced this furniture 3 years ago, I'm going to replace it again because I have this money to spend. We're putting in the new hood exhaust systems for the pizza over the bistro at the high school. Changing and moving the seating annex and the bistro area at the high school, trying to open up some space. As we have more kids, we need to look at taking that, if you've ever been down there, the bistro is in the back corner. We need to kind of move that out of there so that there's more seating and arrangements, but finding a new place to put that. So that's building some walls and moving those things. Warming cabinets at all our elementaries to keep our foods warm. A refrigerated merchandiser at the high school so we can see yogurts and refrigerated goods that they can come and pick up a la carte instead of having to walk through the whole thing.
So you have a number of other projects. Now, I guess the question that would follow up with that is, this one, in your opinion then, and I'm deferring to you because you're the one that operates this, and that's why you're hired as the person that you're in your position. In your opinion, this is the best use of our money at this stage for the dollars that we have for this $410,000?
I think that the events of COVID and the ability to interact with our community and get participation and food to people, I absolutely feel that this is the right time. These three, well, not Jared, I'm sorry, Dawn and Sean can tell you, they've been talking to me for this for 2 years, and I didn't feel it's the right time. I didn't feel comfortable bringing it. There were multiple reasons. I was like, we're not at that point. This is the time, and I think it's become very evident with us needing to get out to our community, to our families, and I want to get warm food to our kids, and I think this is the best way and the most exciting way that we can get this out and get the kids to feel engaged and connected, that they can look at this truck and know it is a school district of Beloit truck, and it's coming, and I can expect it every day. I can expect it at events, and I think it builds a positive relationship with the district. So yes, I do think this is the right time and the best use of our money for this purpose. Now, if I didn't have this balance, would I be coming to you? No, I wouldn't say that if I had to cut something else, this is the best use. But we have this, and we've improved our kitchens to the point that I think this is the right time and the right thing for our community.
Okay. Mr. Winters, did you have something to add on that?
Thank you for the opportunity. Every year that I've been here, we've worked through the Fund 50 to improve all of our cafeterias, our kitchens, our seating areas. As Ms. Armstrong said, this is the most exciting because we're actually working towards improving our student count numbers for participation. And it's also, from my perspective, gives a huge shot in the arm to our community, especially during football games. And my gosh, getting out of this COVID, I'm sure everybody in the community is just tired of COVID. And we are going to wind up coming back. There are so many more opportunities for us to use these trucks to work with our students, to bring back our community pride in our athletics. It is just a worthwhile endeavor. We have spent millions of dollars in our buildings, making them more comfortable, making them pleasant. Again, this is something that really is going to help our student numbers. And when it boils down to getting a hot meal out to our students, we have staff members that work for us. They don't even own a vehicle. And it's a struggle enough just to get to work. But for us to be able to bring them their hot meal to their neighborhood, again, it's not just a student issue, it's also a parenting. So again, I highly recommend that we do this. And we've put a lot of work in this, and we would not be here if we did not 100% believe in this project.
I have a few other questions here. One is, and it's not necessarily for you, Mr. Winters, but was there any type of pro forma that was performed, and is there any information that you've looked at or could put together? And that's something not necessarily for today, because obviously that information wasn't here. And then that to me would be helpful to determine, okay, if we go out, this is what we expect to use this, how many times in the year we expect to use it. Is it going to be every day? Is it going to be once a week? Is it going to be twice a week? Is it going to be at the football games, the basketball games, or whatever it might be? The other part of that, you had mentioned that any money that's made off of this, so I'm assuming concessions and things like that, that has to go back into Fund 50. Is this something is that correct? I mean, okay, because that's where I guess I just want to make sure how this can be used, if it can be used for concessions or things like that.
Yeah.
And can we use it for other activities that may not be school related?
Yes, and only a portion of the money goes back to Fund 50. So the food portion of what you make on the food, the proceeds beyond replacing the food is what goes back to the DECA Club or the Booster Club or Student Council, whoever's doing it. So it is a great fundraising opportunity for them. So no, we're not putting it all back in Fund 50, just the replacement costs. And yes, after the hours of the school lunch program, it can be used, and we've already had people based on this presentation reach out and say, hey, we're interested in partnering with you. How can we do this? So there are opportunities. We just need to make sure that we are using it for its intended purpose, making sure we're utilizing it for the school nutrition program, and everything else beyond those hours that Dawn explained is free for all. That is what we, I shouldn't say free for all, but it's available. And, Dawn has talked to another school district that has the food trucks in process, and she can probably give some insight or get that information, not necessarily today, on how much they're using it. But I think it's how much, I think we set that tone as well. How do we encourage this use, and how do we, I think as we try to spur that interest and that excitement, that's what's going to carry over. And I think with our farmers market and all the opportunities that Beloit has that are so significant to our community, this is a perfect opportunity to take advantage of getting the school district in a positive light. I mean, how awesome would it be to sit at, the farmers market where you've got, the taco truck and the churros and the egg rolls, and here you got the school district of Beloit that can make you corn dogs, that can make you tacos, can make you pizza. We could do that. It's outside of our hours, and we can look at that opportunity, and it's a great opportunity for kids to come in and work it and earn that fundraising money.
Great, thank you. And one last question from me, and I think Ms. Miller has one as well. Who oversees this? Who's accountable? Who's in charge of this throughout the school year? Is that going to be you? Is it going to be someone in your department to be able to say, okay, here's the information? Because to me, if you're going to do this, I really like this idea. I really do. I think that it's well thought out. You've obviously explored it, and I respect what you've done with that. But I think it would be nice to be able to have a report on a regular basis, maybe once or twice a year, to say, hey, here's what we're seeing with the food truck activity. And that could continue to create that excitement for this project.
Yep. And I will say that it will ultimately come under my domain, but Dawn is going to be responsible for making sure that everything falls in line, that Airmark is staying up with how we're utilizing it. And I would expect, especially in this first year, that we would be reporting how successful it is, what we saw as engagement, and get that excitement. We don't generate the excitement without telling people what we're doing.
That's great. That could be something, you create a little newsletter or something.
Yep. And she's also reforming our wellness committee. I'm just going to put a plug in that.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
we will be redoing our wellness policy on what we can feed and how we interact with the wellness of our students and our staff.
Okay. Board Member Miller?
Thank you. I've heard a lot about community pride, and I just want to take a moment and just say that from a parent perspective, I'd say community pride comes from taking care of our kids. And I want to frame what I'm about to say by pointing out that I do think that this has a lot of great potential, and it's exciting, and I'm excited by your passion for it. I want to make a couple points. First of all, when we talk about, I'm not by any means an authority on children in poverty in our community, but I will say that the farmers market is not the exemplar for reaching out to kids in need. I do think that's a great opportunity. Dovetailing into what I want to say next, I do think it's a great opportunity for students. But I really want to point out that what we do as a district has to be driven by what is best for all of our kids, right? And prioritizing our most vulnerable students. And so what I see here is a really cool thing. And I think that I feel like it's very siloed away from what we could be doing, like with our academy model, having worked closely for the last couple of years in my previous job, with our student academies and career opportunities for kids. And I'm hard pressed it's going to be hard for me to get excited about this idea and vote for it without knowing that, like, going forward from here, there's going to be an intertwined kind of like intermingling with like what Mitch is going to present on in a few minutes here with our Fort NGL Academy program, because at the root of everything that we do, it's got to be about all of our students. And I really admire how passionately you spoke about like let's get people a warm meal. And I think that's a huge piece of it. But community pride, it's not going to come from having a food truck at football games. Like, it's going to be from taking care of all of our kids effectively. And so I would just like to ask if you're prepared to take under consideration, if we vote this to be recommended to the full board, personally, I would like to see it brought up to the full board with at least a blueprint for how we're going to integrate this so we can create opportunities right now. And, you know, Chairman Wong, with all due respect to the crossing guard example, that's great. I think it is exciting for kids, but I think it's even more significant and more substantial than what you described, because I think that this could be a true tangible career path for a lot of our kids who maybe don't have that tangible experience right now. So what I see from this is great potential. I don't think we're quite there yet. I want to recommend this to the full board, and I'm wondering if you could talk to me about like your readiness and willingness and ability to intertwine this with our CTE pathways, and just to open this up and kind of reimagine this a little bit as being but really like driven by opportunities for our kids, both to serve them, but also to be to serve them food, quite literally food, but to serve them academically and with those work experiences in our CTE area. I mean, do you have thoughts on that?
Can I jump in on that? Yeah. So, and I appreciate your comments, Board Member Miller, in that. So. This is a great example of how our organization we're all in service of our students, but we all have our places that we're coming at this from. So this is coming at it from a standpoint of our food service. That doesn't exclude an opportunity for us to engage in the mission of serving all of our students from an academic lens, but I would say we are not at a position where we've had those deep conversations. There are definite as Ms. Armstrong had talked about, open opportunities for us to have students come into it with our academies, and with the idea of a Serve Safe program where students could work towards the Serve Safe licensure and stuff like that. There are those opportunities. We have not had that deep conversations in terms of, to your point, how do they fully integrate? I see that there are opportunities for doing that. It's a question of the first mission of the food trucks is the serving of our foods. A close second to that could be how do we also leverage our student body in helping to perform that primary function. And that is a conversation that I would say is open, but has not initiated yet, because this isn't this isn't a reality yet. So we could talk about it in theoretical terms, but if this were a reality term in terms of this is being recommended to the full board and the full board votes on it, we now know this is going to be a reality to us, and it's a reality for us not in the near term, but for the long term. And so how do we leverage that moving forward? I would definitely say that we have that conversation.
And can I clarify one thing?
No, go ahead.
I just want to clarify too. This is Fund 50, which is the school nutrition program. This is not funds that can be used to teach our curriculum, to be doing the hospitality CTE planning that's under Perkins and other opportunities that we have. This would be an opportunity, and that's, I think, maybe if I didn't explain it clear, it's something outside of the traditional day that we could open up to give those experiences and give those opportunities to expand what they're learning in their classrooms. But this we can't host a period class based on the food truck. It can't be an instructional tool. It is strictly, Fund 50 is about feeding the kids. So I don't want to necessarily feel like I was unprepared. I just want to make sure that we all understand, while I respect the academic component, I didn't not prepare for those questions. I honestly, I didn't necessarily think of them as much, because that's not what I'm allowed to focus on under Fund 50. So I approach this solely from the aspect of feeding our kids and getting out to our community about food. It's not, we give them the little pyramid and the circle of what our nutritional values are. Aramark has those handouts for the kids to show what's on their plate. That's the educational, the aspect of the education that we can give under the Fund 50 side of it. Everything outside of that is we can enhance it outside of those program hours.
I appreciate both. Thank you, Dr. Kieser, and thank you, Ms. Armstrong. I guess my follow-up then would just be appreciating that everybody has their area and your professional expertise. I'm worried about how siloed this project seems to be set up as right now, and I'm wondering if you could help me understand, are we able to remove whatever barriers exist? I'm not worried about the school day. Totally understand. You did a great job explaining. So I guess, why couldn't we use like Act 59 and Perkins dollars on a Fund 50 funded project? So we do the food truck, you got a great presentation, we move forward with that. I'd like to know if once we approve that and we move forward with it, if that's where we go, what barriers exist then that would keep our students in Perkins funded programs from being able to then utilize that as a tool? You know what I'm saying? So like I hear you, and I certainly don't want to compromise like the initial concept. It's just that it just doesn't seem like, yeah, the academic and the student achievement side just isn't there. And so it could be though, and I see, it sounds like the Fund 50 side of that, which you put together, is great. I'm wondering, is there potential, and maybe I want to ask it a little more strongly than that. I would really like to see, like Chairman Wong talked about, like moving forward, getting like kind of reports and updates. I would love it if this gets approved, to see like our first update about like, okay, so now that we've got the truck going, here's how we're now working with the academic piece of that so we can use Perkins dollars, Act 59 programs in collaboration with this Fund 50 project. And does that make sense?
I got a question for you, Board Member Miller, is just, how is this, how can we attribute a walk-in freezer or a cafeteria table to academic achievement? And I guess, I'm trying to figure that out, the thought pattern behind it. I look at this and say, yes, it's an opportunity that they've looked at to determine, okay, we have a number of projects, and this being one of them, and this is a way, because otherwise there's probably nothing else in the budget where this money is coming from based upon our figures. And it's not that this is a desperately needed thing within the district. I think it's an opportunity, like they've stated, that we have these funds available, we have to use them. Okay, there's no choice in the matter there. And we are blessed, or I should say not blessed, fortunate that we are in the poverty state that we are, that we get the funding that we do get. So like they had said, that we are the envy of many districts because we get this funding, we have this opportunity to create, I guess, an experience, an initiative that many other districts can't. But I go back to, how is this, how can we attribute, I understand the idea, and I agree wholeheartedly with the idea of academic achievement, trying to get kids involved, but then how do you tie that to a walk-in freezer or a cafeteria table?
That's an awesome question. I'm so glad that you raised that point, because the way that I think about it is that we can simultaneously feed our kids right in the moment and create pathways out of generational poverty for our kids. So we're talking about a mechanism, a vehicle to feed children, which is of course wonderful. And why not do better and feed our kids while we teach our kids a trade, a skill, inspire them to move on to something like a post-secondary pathway? Why not give them that opportunity? Like, how cool is it to be a junior in high school and get to work on a food truck at 4:30 at a soccer game or something like that, right? So like, why wouldn't we? I guess is my question to you, is so like, it's not that the food truck itself isn't a fine idea. We're a school district though, right? So like, let's look for every possible opportunity we can create for our students. So I see it as kind of like, in the moment, sure, we're feeding kids, which is tremendous. Why not in that same moment inspire, train, and give hands-on opportunities to kids to do better and to find inspiration for post-secondary pathways?
I think we agree on the same message here. We just are coming at it 2 different angles. So I know, but I think that the purpose of Fund 50, though, is not for the educational purpose. Obviously, that's an area that we can ask Dr. Kieser about, or Mr. Briesmeister, or whoever it would be. But
No, I'm very clear on that.
Sure.
So like, let's take this really cool Fund 50 thing and like, let's tie it in, let's do it, and then let's let it converge with like Perkins and Act 59 stuff. Like, why not?
Absolutely.
That's
Okay.
all I'm saying. Thanks.
And an excellent opportunity for that is our CLC programming, you know, at our intermediate and elementary schools. This could go to those sites to do the cooking classes at CLC. So there's an opportunity that those intermediate, you know, we haven't looked at every single possibility, but as you're speaking about that, you know, that's perfect. We hire Airmark to come in to the after-school program and teach a cooking class for the CLC. This could be an opportunity that they could do that. So that is one opportunity where we could look at that. I'm not gonna have every opportunity off the top of my head, but there are, I do feel there's lots of opportunities for us to engage the students, and I think anything that they're taking that pride in and able to contribute to will promote that academic achievement.
Okay, we have one comment from Board Member Levy, and then one last question from Board Member Anderson.
Thank you. So the more I hear about this, the more I see the potential, and I'm beginning to get excited. Just to piggyback on the past few comments, it would be cool to work on a food truck, but it'd be more cool to own a food truck. And I would love to see that entrepreneurial component. And if we could hit home with that with our students who are interested in opening restaurants, going into hospitality, et cetera, that a lot of those things could start by opening a food truck or having that as your starting block.
Great comment. Board Member Anderson?
There it goes. All right, so I just want to say right off the bat, I was one of the kids that went through some of the stuff with Aramark, going through hospitality 1, 2, 3, and 4, and actually helping prepare food and stuff like that. So I love these kind of opportunities for kids. It was a great way to get hands-on experience doing these things. But when I started thinking about it and running the catering club at the high school, that it was kind of hard sometimes to actually get kids and other students involved, because now you got to have more commitment after school, which a lot of kids, I mean, when you think about it, they have homework, they have extracurricular activities like football or basketball or soccer. So how are we going to actually be able to say that kids are going to be able to take part in this? And how do we know that kids are actually going to do this for sure?
I think it's how we present it, how we promote it. The examples that I have in mind is when you're saying, you know, they're playing football, they're doing those extracurriculars. You know, what I see happen, because I'm seeing it happen now, is while the football is playing, the basketball team is running concessions. So they're not in season, so they're doing their fun. I mean, this is happening already with our concessions. We have the Nightingales that they host Lancer Night at McNeil to raise funds. We have plenty of organizations that are already trying to take advantage of these opportunities. I think this gives them a more robust platform to do it with much more earning potential for their organizations.
Well, then the follow up with that is, so you said like you can't have a class kind of dedicated to it. And going through all the hospitality classes, like it actually, like when you got to hospitality 4, you're actually serving food in the night spot or coming in early and preparing breakfast. So how are we going to actually be able to teach these kids how to actually do these things in the food truck if we can't have a class kind of devoted to it, to teach the kids actually how to prepare food safely in that vehicle?
I think these are kind of two separate issues, though, aren't they? Because, I mean, the hospitality portion of it, like they had mentioned, during the school day, Aramark, it has to be according to FDA approval, correct? Whereby after 3:30 is when the doors open, and that's where other opportunities arise. Is that correct?
Right.
Did I state that right? So I don't know if that addresses that.
Well, it goes back to, like, I mean, you guys use the example of basketball students, and you're saying like, oh, we'll be able to prep all these different types of food. But how are those students actually going to learn how to do all that prepping? And
Isn't it more bagging up popcorn and pouring soft drinks and handing out? I mean, it's not like at the concessions, there's not like any prep work. I know I've been to the games. I mean, there's no major meals being
We would
done.
have a griddle where they could make burgers or they could do things like that. And that's that instructional component. And typically, it's just like the school stores or when we do concessions, you get a group that is doing it. They learn, we talk about it, we make sure that they're trained in that's food safety. And then they tend to continue that and they move it through that process.
I would add, and I think remember, I understand where we're getting at is it's not, so that's one aspect of it, but it's not excluding the opportunity that you're talking about with hospitality. So this could be an option that hospitality could reach out and say, we could provide that opportunity at a football game or a soccer game or something like that. And that because of their training from in-class work, there's more that they could do. Like, okay, we have this proper supervision for liability and all that, but now you're running this, like what's step one? So they could then apply what they've learned in the classroom. So it's not exclusive of it, it could be inclusive of it if the opportunity is provided for them.
And hospitality could create their own event. It doesn't mean you have to be at a football game. You could say, we're going to do our own community dinner. And they could plan the menu and they could do those things with Airmark, get those things, and then supply that experience that they can tailor it to what they want to do. If they want to do it as a fundraiser or an experience growth opportunity.
okay, and can I ask one more thing?
Go ahead.
All right, so we also talk about like, well, since it's a food truck, we can move it from place to place. How are we going to actually be able to get some of those students from those places to the food truck? Because I'm assuming we can't transport these kids in the food truck. So how are we going to actually get them there to that point?
And absolutely, like that would be a logistical piece that, again, a great problem to have if we have this ability. And we would have to say if we can't get students there, then we would have to make sure that the opportunity in which we want students to do this, perform the application of what they're learning in class, we'd have to make sure that they get there. So it may be limited to something that's at school, after school, on school grounds, so that they don't have to travel anywhere. So.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this?
Can I say something quick before?
Go ahead.
I promise it'll be really short because I'm like really late being home tonight. Okay, I would really like to move this to the full board. I just want to just leave it at, if we recommend this to the full board, is there a willingness with your group here to collaborate with our CTE program? Because I know that wasn't what drove this idea, and I appreciate that, and it is on its own a really cool idea. I just feel like there are a lot of logistics that aren't worked out yet, and that's okay because you're just looking for approval for the idea. Could we bring this, if we approve this to the full board, could we bring this back like sometime this semester, do you think, with some updates about, addressing some of those logistic issues and addressing some of the pieces that were brought up this evening? Is that something that, because here's the thing though, like I don't want to, if that's not where you're going with it, I just honestly kind of want to know, because I don't want us to have two different things in our minds here.
I will speak for me that yes, I will explore every opportunity and have the conversations with Mitch and with our community partners and our extracurriculars, getting the approval for this starts that planning process. You know, we can come with an idea, but I'm not going to spend 6 months planning something that nobody is going to do. So this is getting a concept and an idea forward so that we can start having those dialogues. But I don't want to speak for you guys if you have something else to say.
No, I would just echo those sentiments that, you know, we want to be as transparent as possible, and these questions are all legitimate questions that are worthy of us sitting down, having those conversations. And again, back to my point of being transparent, making sure that all of your questions and concerns, if you all decide to move forward with this, are absolutely addressed. Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate and respect all the work that you put into this and the direction, and it's great stuff, and I appreciate your willingness to continue to be open about how this moves forward. So given that understanding, because like to your point, Ms. Armstrong, we can't do the planning without doing it, I would like to move that we approve to the full board the proposed food truck project.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second on that. Do we have any more discussion? Okay, I'd just like to comment, well, let's just go to the vote. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 3-0 to go to the full board. And I would just like to, this is very exciting, and I'm very happy, and I appreciate you bringing this forward. I would echo what Board Member Miller had mentioned about developing a comprehensive plan. And quite honestly, I think that there's a lot of people that will rally and get behind this. My head is thinking about some things right now, and one of the things that comes to mind is at Black Hawk Tech. I know in the culinary school there, they have a certain day of the month, I believe, that they have cooking, and the culinary school students cook it up. And what I've heard, it's well attended. In fact, it's usually packed out. And I'm thinking, you know, something like this could be cool, whereby maybe there's maybe one day every month we pick a school, one of the schools, it's the school of the month, and the food truck shows up there for all the staff at the end of the day, and the culinary students have maybe baked something and developed pies or cakes or something fantastic for the staff. And just, I mean, that's the kind of stuff, and I'm guessing that's what you're thinking as well.
Well, yeah, and I just want to point out that we have Blackhawk students right here at our high school, thanks to our CT program. So we wouldn't even
Yep.
have, no, gourmet lunch is amazing. Plug BTC, awesome.
There you
We
go.
also have that right in our high school.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you again. We appreciate your help and with that. So, okay, we move on after a long conversation on that, but well worth it. The next project is, I know this is a favorite of Board Member Miller, and it's something that I followed as well, is the Ford NGL Phase 2 Academic Academies. So I believe Mr. Briesmeister is going to be presenting. Is your mic on?
It's on. Hello?
Nope.
Better? We'll figure it out. This is just my warm-up one. I got one more presentation after this, so it'll be better. First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Pels and Mr. Abrahamson for coming to present with me on the Ford NGL Phase 2 of our career academies. And, you know, Ms. Pels is just such an awesome admin team at the high school, and an awesome group of teachers, and an awesome group of academy teacher leaders. And if you haven't had a chance to meet Mr. Abrahamson yet, I gotta introduce him. We recruited him heavily from Rockford, where he has been living the Career Academy life, and he has a great depth of knowledge. So I know sometimes at board meetings there's questions, so I figured I better bring somebody that's been engaged in that for a few years. But without further ado, why are we doing this? We just really, the core thing is to prepare our students for college and career. I always say college there. College is not the finish line. College is kind of your midpoint. We want to get you that successful life, right? But when you say college, that is such a critical piece for a lot of people. In our community, we have had some concerns about performance in our schools. It's not a secret. Some of our state report cards are not as great as they could be. I would point out that BMHS is doing quite well and continuing to improve, but we want to continue improving. We want to improve our student engagement, our attendance. Recently I presented the Children at Risk report, and attendance was a major concern of ours. This is one program that would directly address that by increasing that student engagement. Increasing student engagement also leads to less tardiness. Improving our student work habits when they see the reason behind their labors. Working on our test scores. Increasing content knowledge. Creating those robust plans for after high school. And of course, as board member Miller mentioned, breaking that cycle of poverty. And our Career Academies work to address all these. This is the model that is the most recognized nationally. It was born in Nashville, Tennessee, but we have Career Academies as close as Racine, Rockford, Illinois, and multiple other areas that are well established for well over 10 years now. The Ford NGL roadmap is composed of 5 phases. We have completed phase 1, and we've done a good portion of the other work actually outside of the framework due to some incredibly engaged people, specifically Heidi Andre, a science teacher at the high school, has been instrumental in building these pathways, an incredible depth of knowledge about Career Academies, and also with her ability to understand the schedule and conceptualize these things. Working with her has been amazing for building out our pathways, which I'll get to in a second. But this would be phase 2, the envision phase. We've already completed a great deal of work. We've trained our academy teacher leaders. We've trained all of our teachers in multiple areas, including teaching on the block, including interdisciplinary teaming. Last year, we were able to formally form the Collegiate Academies, where our students have the ability to earn an associate's degree or technical diploma from Black Hawk Technical College, concurrently with their Beloit Memorial High School diploma. We built our career pathways and revamped the course catalog for this year, and already we're seeing some big differences in what students are signing up for and some very clear pathways as far as what they're deciding to engage in. It's easier for them to know what to take. It's easier for them to know about our opportunities. As I've said before, we're opportunity rich, but sometimes we're participation poor. If you make it very clear, very easy to understand, then students, parents are able to make those better choices so that they can take advantage of all the resources and opportunities that we offer at the high school and make really great decisions that lead them to a productive post-secondary experience. We have built and rebuilt our freshman seminar. We continuously work on improving that in academic lab, which includes social-emotional learning, our study skills, and then we're even building in more opportunities for credit recovery during that academic lab as well. Our Career Academies, in case you didn't remember, we have our freshman academy where we bring in all of our various intermediate students and turn them into proud Purple Knights. After their freshman year, after some career exploration and a little bit of soul searching, hopefully taking a few exploratory courses, they'll join one of our career academies, PACMES, Bach, or HESS. We are currently a wall-to-wall academy school, and what that means is every student is in an academy. The difference being some schools rely on a magnet academy, or maybe they offer 1 or 2 academies which students can participate in, that one career path, and everyone else is sort of in a general liberal arts program. In ours, we group all students into academies. And I would add that we do this with an equity focus as well. So we're making sure, all of our special ed students participate in the academy program. And of course, EL students are all supported throughout their academic pathways as well. We've increased our dual credit opportunities for students. Obviously, when you can earn an associate's degree, that requires a large amount of dual credit and transcripted opportunities that students are taking during their regular 4 years. We now have a common academy planning time, and during that time, we can plan. This is the time where interdisciplinary teams work together to look at student performance, plan activities, build identity, and carry out all the academy business. Essentially, when I say academy meetings, I want us to think small learning communities. That's kind of like the front line when a student starts falling behind grades or attendance. Those teams can work together to find someone that they trust and rely on to start building those relationships. And then if need be, we can refer them to the proper service. Continuing creating those pathways to industry skill certification. Have to brag, we have a very good record of providing those certifications in this area. The last time we quantified it, we were above Janesville, Milton, sorry Emily, Madison, and I believe Milwaukee, so pretty good. Well, we're all feeling Beloit proud tonight, and when we do that, we want to have some exciting branding and some color schemes that are associated with our academies. So purple, Freshman Academy, we're bringing all of them in, whether they're Lancers or Cavaliers. They're coming in, they're becoming the Purple Knights. White is our Hess Academy, gray and silver is Bach, and of course black is PACMES. The nuts and bolts of phase 2, I'm not going to show you guys these videos, but I did provide the links so that the board can review these, and anybody else that has access to this, please feel free to review them. Phase 2, the biggest part of this is engaging the community and businesses. So that includes a convening organization, which is a third party typically. Often it's a Chamber of Commerce or another group like that, which helps build the bridge between the school district and the businesses. We focus on intentional partnerships so that we go into a partnership knowing what each side expects out of it and how we're going to measure that and how often we're going to follow up with those people on those partnerships. How are we going to cultivate them? What happens if something starts going astray, right? Because a partnership is something that doesn't just sustain itself. It requires energy and constant nurturing and feedback so that it becomes a fruitful thing for our students to participate in. Collaboratively develop a portrait of a graduate. We have a highly engaged community, and they want to be included when it comes to us defining publicly what we want to have in our Beloit Memorial High School graduates. And that's different for all of our students, but we do have some common themes there. When talking with Dr. Kieser, he agreed that some of this work would pair well with developing our strategic plan coming this winter. So we're not duplicating anything, we're not redoing anything, but we're just braiding all of our initiatives together for better student performance and community and student engagement. The other component of phase 2 is embedding career-themed learning in all courses with cross-curricular projects. This doesn't say we walk into the English class, grab the curriculum, throw it out the window. What this says is we start out small with some small projects where you might include the art department, the business department, a CTE department, math, to all work together on something where they each play a key role. That's the work that we're looking to get started, just piloting this year, and just sort of getting a taste for it. And then, of course, always looking to increase career exploration activities. The commitment for this work, this is a one-year process. They have already done several phase 2s in COVID-friendly ways. So they've done them using virtual tools and helped walk communities through that, and they've had good results. So it's important to have district alignment and support. So this helps by being an important component of the strategic plan. The cost is $58,500. And then we're also going to have to commit to some ongoing staff professional development so that they're familiar with their roles. And of course, as new staff come in, they have to be trained up in our best practices. And as staff shift roles and maybe take on more leadership in different areas, then we want to give those people opportunities to grow as well. With that being said, did I miss anything? Abe, Emily?
Questions from committee members?
I think I used all mine up, but I will just congratulate everyone on their great work in accomplishing phase 1, and I'm excited to see where this goes.
I just had one quick question. You talk about staff professional development. Is that for like all staff, or is it for like the freshman academies instructors? Is it for, certain areas? I mean, what does that entail?
The biggest thing for professional development is providing staff with something that's useful for them in their practice. So if somebody volunteers to become an academy teacher leader, they would receive a special training that would help them in that role. When it comes to something, Ms. Pels was instrumental in delivering our training for teaching on the block. Because when you teach a 75 to a 90-minute block course, it's very important that you do it the best possible way, because that's a lot of minutes that could be wasted. And along with a block course comes a very short-term schedule oftentimes. So you have to make sure that your time is utilized very effectively. So a training like that would be useful for all classroom teachers that are teaching on the block. When it comes to cross-curricular and interdisciplinary projects, that's a training that we haven't taken on yet, but that's something that would be offered to all staff.
Okay, thank you. So do we have a motion?
I move that we refer to the full board for approval of the Ford NGL Phase 2.
In a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of moving approval of the purchase of the Ford NGL Phase 2 program and consulting in the amount of $58,500, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Motion
Point of
carried.
order. So she had one motion and you said a different motion. Which motion do you want me to go with?
John's are always better than mine.
Okay,
I just took it off the screen.
okay. Thank you.
My internet won't connect, sorry. Thanks for reading it for me.
We good there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Briesmeister. And I believe you are up for 2B. Credit Recovery Program Renewal.
Yes, I'm just pulling that up right now. I have this in a PowerPoint instead of my Google slide, sorry. Yeah, if you could share yours, that'd be great. When I bring up the presentation, it drops me out of the meeting. You know what? I think I might have it here. You got it? Great.
You want to start? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just stealing it back from you for a second. I think I got it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do the clicking. Whew. There we go. Credit recovery programs purchase. So right now, this is a presentation, and our main purpose here is to renew our 2 credit recovery programs. We currently are utilizing Apex Learning and Edgenuity for the 2021 school year. These are offered in multi-year contracts, but from coming into this at this point with and reviewing it, I think a 1-year contract would be the most prudent route. Some basic background: each of these programs allows our students to work on completing coursework at their own pace to earn credits. So some of this is done within the building during dedicated time. Some of this is done at home with students. Some of this is done in some of our off-site areas with some of our community partners. Each program does have built-in supports to assist in student learning, and these are 2 links, or if you wanted to look at each provider and run through some of their options, that's available for you to check out. So the specific uses for these 2 programs: Apex Learning is now being used at Beloit Memorial High School for credit recovery during the year, and this also happens during summer, in summer school. There's additionally in-class interventions which use the Apex tutorials, specifically in the math area, and the Apex tutorials are also used in GEDO 2 for those students building skills. Now, when we say a tutorial, a lot of times what we think of is, hey, I don't know how to use this program, I'm going to click on this, it's going to show me how the program works, right? But in this case, tutorials is used in a different sense. Tutorials are used to assess where a student is at skill-wise, and then create a specific sequence of curriculum so that those skills can be remediated and improved. So when we say tutorials, don't think, how does this work? Think really specific skills that we're trying to remediate. Edgenuity is utilized at BLA, Fresh Start, and also the English department used it for some summer school offerings. So 2019 through 2020 was the pilot year for the programs. Odyssey was being phased out. So these were the ones that we wanted to take a look at to see what was the most functional for our needs. Recommendations were developed with the staff, administrators, students, counselors, and the vendors. This included our staff and administrators over at BLA. They're heavy users of this as well. The pilot was conducted by Bill Graymont, and we met and worked out, I picked up where he left off and then worked with some of the staff to just see if any of their experiences had changed over the summer during the summer school program. In general, the consensus was with our staff and counselors at BLA, they really preferred the Edgenuity platform, whereas at the high school, the Apex platform better suited their needs. And it was a tough year for a pilot. As you can imagine, we only had 3/4 of the year to utilize it, and it takes quite a bit of time just to get staff, students really trained up and working with a platform like this. Especially the tutorials, we're really just scratching the surface. So there's a lot more work to do and a lot more data to be found on which is truly the most effective platform. And when we think about credit recovery, it's also important to think about this is not just for students that have failed classes. This can be something that can improve our state test scores if it's done properly. That is where these credit recovery programs are moving to in the future, is we don't want this to be a Band-Aid. We want this to become more of a robust learning experience where kids get back on track quicker, and the way they get back on track quicker is by developing those skills. So it's not checking off, I completed this English unit number 12. That's not where we want to get with this. Where we want to get is developing those core skills so that they're going to be continually improving and more successful in their educational journey. This is a screen that shows the price breakdown. So for, we do have a significant amount of students that take advantage of credit recovery at the high school. So where the cost, it was only $1,000 less compared to an unlimited license, or if we just had fixed seats. So this is going to allow us the flexibility that we need to make sure each student can have a seat when they need it. The tutorials, this is a one-time discounted fee of 60% discount for the tutorials so that we can allow our math department and other departments that want to pilot these tutorials and in-class kind of tier 1 intervention in a little bit different format than we normally do. So they'll have the opportunity to have significant amounts of students that they've identified that are missing skills, get caught up on those skills in a really timely manner. And so that's a school-wide enrollment as well. We have some services for training our staff so that they can have professional training involved with this. So not only do they know the nuts and bolts of operating the program, troubleshooting, things like that, but they also know best practices for delivering the learning and how to support those students and make it a positive atmosphere as well. Edgenuity is much more cut and dry. We're looking at 50 seats, so when one student no longer needs a seat, another student can be rolled in and utilize that seat, and for that it's a flat rate of $30,000. And
Do we have any questions from committee members? I do have a few here. First of all, you had mentioned that this is a one-year renewal and that there's an option for a 1 year or a 2 year. Is there any financial benefit, and what's the rationale in going to a 1 year versus 2?
There is, of course, a cost breakdown. Each program pretty heavily tries to get you on board for a multiple year contract, right? And that can be great if you have all stakeholders involved and they're committed to the program, they've been trained up, and they're seeing the great results. Because this was a limited pilot and not all of our staff members are 100% sold on either program, and we're still developing how we're engaging students with these programs as well. It's just a little bit more prudent. It might be a little bit more costly for the 1 year program, but it can be very costly in student achievement if we saddle ourselves with something that's no longer functional for students, and especially is not meeting our staff needs as well.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Also, how many did you say were enrolled last year into each of the programs?
I'd have to double check on the enrollment for Apex, but it was, I don't know. Emily's avoiding eye contact.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'd have to look, we'd have to double check.
Okay.
Because a lot of times they'll bounce in for one course, take care of it quickly, and then move on. So I could give you a number on how many people use the program total for even just one course, or those people that are like significantly like a year or two behind. We could look at that as well. We can break all that out.
Okay, I guess it'd be helpful. You can do as a follow-up as well. We did have one question from Board Member Levy. Go ahead.
Thank you. Could you briefly explain, it's my understanding that both Apex and Edgenuity have gone through their trial period, why one hasn't been selected over the other? And I guess my more specific point is, why would we do a license on both of them?
Right, Board Member Levy, that is a really great question, and one that I was hoping that someone would bring up, because it makes a ton of sense, right, fiscally. So here, the situation is such, our license expired July 31st, and I took over this role in July. So in order, my biggest concern was, number one, no interruption in our students' programming, because we need, if you're a student that's falling behind, we cannot have our structures making you fall further behind. My second major concern was with this difficult school year and with some of the challenges associated with if we did decide to go to a single program, would I be not listening to the voice of my staff and administrators who specifically said what they wanted? And then the third thing is, how, if we went to a single platform, would we ensure that we had proper professional development for all those people utilizing the program? So if you picked one over the other, how would you make sure that everybody at the high school was trained in Edgenuity? Or how would you make sure that Fresh Start and BLA and everybody else was trained in Apex? So in a perfect world, we would have one platform, really robust professional development. Every administrator would find that it suits their needs. Every staff member would be well trained on it, and every student would be closing those achievement gaps.
Does that address your question, Board Member Levy?
Just a quick follow-up. So if I'm understanding you correctly, the reason for moving forward with both of them is that students may still have outstanding work in both systems, and you don't want for that to be lost. And then my second part is, unless I missed something, it seems to me it would be more efficient to pick one platform and do that robust training. So that part is still unclear.
Sure. Let me just address the first part. So we did have students that were continuing their summer school and credit recovery programs past that July 31st deadline where we were essentially supposed to be turned off. So I reached out to both vendors, and they were kind enough to grant us a free extension of both of their services so that we could make sure that all of those students were able to finish their programming. And then we actually had a staff member that we time carded that was working to continue with those students to make sure all of them completed. So that was the one part. And then as far as the efficiency of running one platform, that can't be denied. I definitely understand that. And when it comes to professional development, and when it comes to tech support, and when it comes to just being fiscally responsible, it would be preferable to run one platform. With that being said, we just have to really balance it based on student outcomes, right? So every dollar that we spend is going to be related to student outcomes and getting our kids in a better place. So I want to make sure that my work is supporting that, number one, and then closely being fiscally responsible right after that.
So final point, is your position that some students do well in Apex and other students do better in Edgenuity? And are you saying it's not a viable option to select one platform and with guidance get all of our students to be successful in that one platform?
The feedback that we had specifically from BLA was Edgenuity better met the needs of their students. They had better success rates with it. Now, with that being said, if they only had, 6 months to sort of try out a program, how much more could we have taught them with a longer term, with more robust professional development? Could they find that the other program was meeting their needs as well? And from what I understand, students in the Actions program are using Apex. So there's a lot more research that I would like to do, and just see what's really going to be the most effective for moving the needle with our kids.
From what you're saying, then it sounds as though your eventual goal is to have one platform. Is that?
If that from the nuts and bolts perspective, it makes it much easier to manage. It makes it much easier to support. It's more affordable. But the trade-off is if our student need is so different or building needs are so different that another program is better suited to them, then we would want to listen to those voices first.
Okay. Board Member Anderson, you had a question?
So, by talking to your staff, what were some of the advantages and disadvantages of both that they've come across?
The advantage of Apex we found was students that really just only had maybe a few areas of a course where they didn't do so well. They were able to take some assessments and figure out what they needed to retake, and then they could move pretty quickly through the program. That was an advantage. Apex is a very robust program. In my previous life, I was involved in an Apex pilot, and I taught with a group of kids that were essentially at risk, and we worked together. Me learning the Apex platform, them learning the Apex platform, and catching up on the work. It is a challenge. The work is challenging. The work is rigorous. So they are getting quite a bit out of it. So I know that our staff like that rigor. I know with Edgenuity, the feedback I got, which I can't verify with data, was that Edgenuity had a little bit better accessibility. The bar for entry was a little bit easier for some of our students that had lower reading levels. The pushback on that was some people felt that Edgenuity was a little bit more prone to gaming the system. Watching, going through the video, clicking through things, kind of going through that. Edgenuity, of course, their representatives say that is totally false. We're just as viable as everything. And of course, both companies provided me with efficacy studies, which they use their own assessments on how effective they were. So I'm not going to present those to you because they didn't seem very effective to me. So in general, Edgenuity has, it's a little bit easier to pull pieces out and tailor it to that student. Apex is slightly more rigid, but it does also still allow flexibility. It still allows you to just test certain aspects of the course. And the biggest thing that we're trying to get to is making sure that our students have mastery of standards. This is not about a punitive or a punishment. This is about, hey, you didn't demonstrate mastery of this quite yet, so let's put you in an environment and let's see what you do know. And then let's figure out a program to fill in the gaps of what you don't know.
I'm sure all those surveys and studies they did were completely unbiased. Did that answer your question? Okay. With all that being said, I guess my hope would be that, yes, down the road, if there is a major advantage for one program over another, that we continue to look at it and you're fiscally responsible. And I guess that's where we rely on you to continue to look at that as the overseer of this. And then if there is a reason to continue to keep to, the rationale behind that as you step forward, because I think that just makes it easier on our end and probably fewer questions. So with all of that being said, do we have a motion?
All right, so I move that we purchase the renewal of the Apex Learning and Ingenuity for the 2021 school year in the amount of $59,940 and also $30,000.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it matters, but that was the wrong number.
Which?
I think you said 59,940. That was for Apex only. The full amount is in board docs. It's 89,940, if I'm doing the math right.
Right. It's the combined of the two. I think that his the 59,940 is for one program, and the 30,000 is for the second, for the combined total of 89,940.
Yeah.
Okay. So then that motion is correct. You okay with it, Michelle? Michelle. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the purchase of the renewal of the Apex Learning and Ingenuity for the 2021 school year in the amount of $59,940 and $30,000 for a grand total of $89,940, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Riesmeister.
Thank you, board.
And the last item on the programs and curriculum and materials is the literacy pilots. Mr. Bosco.
I have my screen split, so let me unsplit it and see if that comes up better. Is that a little better? Okay, good evening, Board of Education. Thanks for having us. I have Rosa Maria Larson is the Biliteracy Instructional Leadership Coordinator. She has joined our department within the last 2 weeks and has hit the ground running. I'm super excited to have her on the team. She's been a great addition. I look forward to doing a lot of great work with her. As you heard Mitch talk about, kind of with the COVID situation and Safer at Home last year, our literacy pilots were interrupted as well. And as Dr. Keyser came on board, we wanted to look at how we could wrap up the pilot process from last year and relaunch the pilot in a way that would really help the district approach literacy at the K-5 level in a more strategic manner. As we go through the presentation, some of our key goals for a literacy pilot include making sure that we increase student proficiency in literacy at the earliest levels. You've heard all the presentations tonight about all the great things going on at the high school. This is a direct feeder program for that and really has a huge impact. Our ability to create great literacy opportunities for students at the lowest levels is very important. We want to adopt a literacy program that honors and feeds all programs. Our dual language program, our monolingual program have been living in silos that I've heard several times tonight. And with the pilots that we're going to talk about this evening, it would really align us curricularly, professional development, professional learning communities, all of those areas. Increasing teacher involvement in the pilot process. Last year, out of 130 K through 5 teachers, we had 10 that were involved in the pilot. So we wanted to increase teacher input into the pilot process, because as we move through this, ultimately it's about teacher buy-in and ownership. And then lastly, this pilot process really culminating in a single resource adoption across the district that would serve both our monolingual schools and our bilingual schools. That would just make our operations a lot more efficient in multiple aspects. The two pilots, the two resources that we're talking about are Savas ReadyGen, which our dual language program has been using for the last 3 years. Both of the pilots that we're looking at are balanced literacy resources, which is very important to us, and they both have very strong biliteracy components as well. As we went through this process last year, we really wanted to look at, and with Dr. Kieser's input as he transitioned into the superintendent role, wanted to look at a single resource that could bring all of our programs literacy-wise into alignment. And so that's really the impetus for focusing on these two. ReadyGen, and you may or may not know this, has been used for the last couple of years in our dual language schools up through 6th grade. And there was a lot of input from our bilingual principals and staff about including ReadyGen as one of the pilot resources to examine. And then the second one is the American Reading Company. Very similar, but also some differences. The key to both of these, as I said, is a very strong balanced literacy approach. As our teachers will be exposed to the American Reading Company for second term, there are a lot of really unique and strong assessment components that come with ARC that we're very interested in a district as well. So as we go through the process, that will be some of our focus. As I talked about increasing the number of teachers that are involved in the pilot, as I said, there were 10 classrooms involved in the pilots last year. Last year, Merrill was not included in the pilot, and as one of our schools that really needs a lot of attention, we felt that if we're going to adopt a resource district-wide, Merrill has to be a part of that process. And so we really tried to pinpoint a couple of grades in each building, or a grade at least in each building. And the reason we went with grades versus individual classrooms was so that a whole grade could PLC together and really be in the context of that pilot and work together to process through that. And then with the 4-5s in the intermediates, we approached it very similarly in terms of whole grade level, so that they have a complete immersed experience within the resource. The evaluation process, I'll talk about the timeline at the end, but the evaluation process really is looking at the rubrics that we use to assess these key areas, and then getting very explicit staff input in terms of how they felt about the professional development support, the cultural relevance of materials, the strength of that balanced literacy framework, and then lastly, how strong the assessment components are of both of those programs. And again, we'll bring all of this data back to you as we go through the evaluation phase later. Something that this is a little different than what you have in board docs, and I apologize for that. As I was working with the representative from the American Reading Company, trying to pinpoint the resources that we would need for the pilot, my initial estimates were around $60,000, and I had to put around in there just so I was transparent with you guys. And actually, we have been in discussions with ARC up until this afternoon, actually. And that $76,450 price tag is, as of today, for the resources, both physical resources and digital resources that we'll need for the pilot for second term. The adoption timeline, we'll be doing ReadyGen pilot first term. That training has already taken place. Those resources came, they were free from the company. We'll do second term American Reading Company pilot. We will have professional development come in late September, early October, so that when term 2 starts in early November, we're ready to hit the ground running. January, we'll do the pilot analysis for both of the resources, and then come back to you in February for a final board presentation, with the hope that we'd be able to order materials and set up professional development in March of 2021 for the following school year. Any questions?
Board Member Miller.
Just a quick one. Thank you for the presentation. Both of you did a really nice job. I'm just curious about how it dovetails into like kind of what we have at the high school, like the six, like, and getting into that, it's like the 6 through 12 literacy interventions. I'm curious, you know, how do the skills kind of hand off, and kind of what's the thinking about, I guess, what do you hope for in terms of how many students are going to be equipped to kind of emerge out of an intervention program by the time they get to high school?
That's a great question, Board Member Miller. Both ReadyGen and American Reading Company as a resource have very strong tiered scaffolds within the resource. And so our goal is with a strong universal resource and a really well-articulated standards approach at the K-5 level, that we will reduce the number of students that are needing Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention. Just to the same point that I said earlier in terms of us realizing our high school outcomes are directly connected to our early literacy programming, and so that's a key component of this as well.
Thanks, really appreciate it.
No.
I do have a few questions, actually. First of all, let's see. Actually, that one you've answered. When you said the evaluation phase, when is that going to take place?
So the pilots, I remember, the pilots will, at the end of the first term with ReadyGen, we'll do the analysis of that. We'll do the analysis of ARC at the end of second term. And we'll aggregate all of that data and make a decision as a team. All of the pilot teachers, school leadership team, superintendent, we'll have that discussion in January, bringing the presentation to you in February with a proposed adoption of a resource in February.
So that's so that you come back with one program that we're going to go with ultimately.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Also, I'm assuming, and you kind of answered this to some extent, I guess, how were the pilots received last year? And I know it was a partial year. And then also, what was the along with goes with it is, what was the feedback from staff regarding the pilot?
The feedback on the pilots last year was, of the two that we did, Fontes and Pinnell and American Reading Company, staff were in favor of American Reading Company, but the dual language schools really wanted ReadyGen to be a part of that discussion because they've been using it successfully for the last 3 years. And so again, listening to the building principals and the teachers that were using these resources and needing to extend the pilot anyways, that's where ReadyGen came into the discussion with ARC. So it's a very, the thing about this pilot is both of these resources are going to go through the entire kind of scope of the process and will be evaluated objectively in January, February when it's time to be done. So,
was staff involved in the selection process of the pilots to begin with?
Of the initial pilots,
right.
There was a presentation of about 5 different companies. This is probably November last year. And of those 5 companies, it was taken down to 3 and then eventually down to 2. And there was a team of some teachers and reading specialists that were a part of those presentations and did some surveys and rubrics to kind of decide on which those 2 were going to be to be a part of that initial pilot.
Okay. And my last question is, and I know that we were kind of absent a strategic plan, but I put down here, what are your expectations? And not necessarily yours, but I guess the district as a whole. It's no surprise that we have literacy problems in this district, and it starts at the earliest stages.
Absolutely.
And we know that that's a big problem. I think that there's been a lot of efforts within the community. I think that we've been trying to do what we can do within the district itself, but one thing that I would encourage is that you develop some type of expectation so that we're not just, to determine here's where we're at today, here's what we expect as far as the number of kids that are reading at proficient levels throughout the year or at the end of the year. So I guess I would have those targets out there so that you have something to shoot for in the absence of a strategic plan.
And I think that's, when we look at a K-5 literacy resource and just our K-5 literacy program, we're really looking at a strong universal program to really get to the point where our need for Tier 2 and Tier 3 starts to reduce, because ultimately that's going to help our high school programs and our outcomes as far as college career readiness be more successful. Another thing that we've been really focusing on both in the COVID and even before that is this idea of having a really, really strong standards focus and really being able to understand when we're working with students, what do we really truly understand what they need to know and be able to do? Are the things that we're doing in class every single day directly connected to the standards? And if there are things that are not, because ultimately between the different assessments that we're using, those are the things that tell us how successful our curricula are being implemented. And so that's something else that we're really looking at throughout the entire system, K through 12, is how strong is our alignment to the standards and making sure that our teachers understand that the instructional part and the assessment part with those standards in the middle really go together. So that will definitely be a focus for us moving forward, Board Member Wong.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So do we have a motion? And if we do, I would recommend that we also include the dollar amount in there since it's not in the recommended
Yep.
action area.
So that 76,450 is the correct amount.
I move that we adopt both proposed programs. I'm sorry, I move that we recommend to the full board that we adopt both proposed programs, ARC and it's Next Gen?
Ready, Jen.
I'm sorry, Ready
Yep.
Gen, sorry, for the total of $76,450.
Second.
Okay. Hearing we have a motion and a second to move approval to the full board for the purchase of the two programs, American Reading Company and the Ready Gen, in the amount of $74,400.
$76,450.
$76,450. Okay, I can't read that.
Michelle's got it.
You got that? Okay.
Ms. Shope's got it.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Bosco.
Thank you.
Presentation. Okay, that brings us to next meeting, which would be, wow, where are we getting into October? October 6th is what I had on the calendar. And I am not going to apologize for the long meeting tonight. I told my wife I'd be home early tonight, but we went 2 hours and 15 minutes according to my calendar. And one thing for the public and for everybody else that is listening or anyone that's part of this is the committee structure that we have set in place is specifically designed for this exact work. And the work that we did tonight, and then we did a lot of work and discussion on the food truck, which I'm very excited about. But I think there were some very good questions and dialogue that we shared tonight. So I think it's essential that the public knows and that everybody knows that's involved understands that this is the role of the committees, so that hopefully we can get our board meetings down to a reasonable amount of time. I see a thumbs up from Miss Miller over there. So, and I know that after the 4 to 5 hour board meetings her and I've sat through in the last year, we would certainly welcome that. So with all that being said, I will, do we have a motion for adjournment?
Yeah, and I'd like to thank our administrators for being so open to doing that committee work. It's really productive, and I want to echo what you said. And yes, move to adjourn.
Okay.
I will second that.
All right. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carried. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.